Welcome back to the Movie Pope and StoryProof podcasts. Today we are going to be taking a look at Wicked for Good. Now, in the first episode, we've had a very in-depth discussion of the first movie, Wicked Part 1, which came out in 2024. So be sure to check that out. And I gotta say, like, when we did our review of the first movie, it was not only was it very in-depth, but there were a lot of elements that we found in that movie that got to us, really, in one way or another. Bradley, I know for you, you were you were very effervescent in your praises of part one. So we're going to be taking a look at part two, and I want to see if that same level of praise, carries on. But let's do this here.
Spoiler alert! No,
They call that foreshadowing.
I will say this because I will say this because if Wicked was very bright, sunny, and optimistic in terms of the color palette, it was very bright and warm. What we see in Wicked for Good is more darker in tone, right?
Yeah.
So it's like all of the life and joy and fun that we saw in the first movie kind of got sucked out, and it becomes this like dour kind of dark, almost like, I mean, I guess you could make the comparison. It's sort of like Zack Snyder's DC, where everything was dark and everybody was going out and doing all these like horrible things. But but Bradley, as you mentioned in the review of part one, I mean, the original musical is broken into two acts, and you mentioned that what we saw in part one pretty much matches up with what we would expect in act one of the musical. Without giving too much away, is Wicked for Good following the same playbook as act two, or do they take liberties when it comes to the way they execute this movie?
So when I mentioned in the first part, sorry, we are sitting in close enough proximity that his microphone picks me up. In the first part, I had mentioned that the first act of a show is usually longer. It is the case for this one as well. Mm-hmm. So going into the second movie, I'm like, when I saw the runtime, I'm like, they're gonna have to add more stuff. They took a lot more liberties. All the stuff where you see animals was added. The thing about them escaping through the yellow brick road to like the different dimension, that was added. Elphaba song that she sings at that point was added. The Cowardly Lion being a part of that scene was added. Ariana Grande's song, I don't know why I said Elphaba and then Ariana Grande. Glinda's song that she sings about just like being a good person towards the end, that was added. So this one definitely takes the most liberties with what is there, but also to get that runtime they had to add more. So they added significantly more to this one than they did to the first one. Some of it good, some of it not. So yeah, they definitely took a lot more liberties with the second one than I feel like they did with the first one.
And that's interesting too, because we've seen movies in the past where where for some reason they decide to take the source material and stretch things out or add elements to it, and it may work to some degree, and in other areas it kind of makes you wonder, was that really necessary? Because does it really enhance the story, or does it make the characters more likable? Because the way I've always understood it is, if you're trying to add these elements in there, right, I imagine you would add them in there because you want to, you have an agenda of wanting to make, Elphaba more likable, or you want to give us more context about who Glinda is, so we, we can learn to appreciate her as a character and who she will become when we see her appear in The Wizard of Oz, where she helps Dorothy. But it sounds like what's going on here is that they're just adding it for the sake of adding it, right? Because they just need to pad things out. So to start off, I mean, what we see here is the construction of the yellow brick road with animal labor. So obviously there are no political, subtext in there whatsoever. It's definitely continuing the theme that we discussed previously, where Elphaba kind of like nails her colors to the mast when it comes to animal rights, but there really is no payoff. And we kind of see this theme kind of continue, because you kind of have to wonder, why exactly is this a thing? Why exactly are they hammering home the point that talking animals are bad, and now they're being treated as subclass. I was going to say subhuman, but more like second class citizens in Oz. Um, and to add to that too, I mean, Elphaba has pretty much become public enemy number one. Like we see her face plastered all over Oz and Munchkin Land and Winky Country and the Emerald City. So I mean, what we get in part one, where everybody is kind of learning, and kind of growing into their own. They've kind of come out in part two as, well, there's no other way to say it. They come off as assholes. So
Yeah.
right, so right off the bat, I mean, it kind of sets the tone that this is not a very happy place, and we see this thing continue as the movie progresses. But I just want to get your guys' initial thoughts on what we're seeing in the beginning of this movie, because, like I said, I was getting Zack Snyder vibes like all over the place. Like the only other way like to make it darker was if the Wizards started, he started ordering, was it Order 66 or from Star Wars. It's like all the animals are just being led away in the magic green train to the Emerald City, and all of a sudden it's like Bratwurst night at the Emerald City. Everybody's having sausages of every kind. But yeah, Bradley, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with your thoughts on the beginning of the movie here, and we can kind of do a roundtable discussion on this.
Yeah, I will say the one thing that really struck me at the beginning of this, going into a little further in the movie, is when you talk about what she's doing and like the impact that she's having, because we see her like fighting the construction of the Yellow Brick Road. It doesn't really seem to do anything, because like we see her fighting the construction of the Yellow Brick Road. You're like, haha, Viva la Revolution. And then literally the next scene, they're like, we're announcing the completion of the Yellow Brick Road. You're like, well, shit, that didn't do any good, did it?
It's a Tiananmen Square kind of thing, if you think about it.
Yeah, it really is like the fact that, and this is the scene of them doing the Yellow Brick Road is another one of those things, like I mentioned in the last one, where in the books they painted the city green to make it look real. In this, we see that they are actively painting the bricks as they go into the ground, making them look golden. So it's all about appearances. The stuff where it's her, I freaking love when she's on the ground and she goes to fly away on her broom and she like throws it down like a skateboard and then runs and jumps on it. Dude, she is. Well, one thing I do like about that is I feel like that's a really easy way, quick way to show us a bit of a progression of time, because at the end of the first movie, she's like, oh my God, I can fly. This one, she's like, I can do tricks. I got this. I can do everything. And I do kind of like this. So Brenda and I, we just went and saw the new Avatar movie. And I was like, I love how at the end of every one of these, it's like, oh my God, big fight, we're going to lose. Oh my God, A1 saved us. And every time I'm like, I know what's going to happen and I'm here for it. Every single time Elphaba shows her head in this, is like, here come the flying monkeys. It's like, my God, every time. So that gets a little old, that's like the only thing they have to fight against her with. But yeah, it's her fighting the animals, and then this movie has a lot of Elphaba starting to win, and then something bad happens. I mean, it is like one after another after another. I was like, God, man. Up until the end, when she just quote unquote dies, I'm like, okay, that's fine. So when you talk about it being dark, it really is like she can't get ahead in this movie. She really can't. Ultimately, she's not the one who I would say quote unquote wins. I would say it's Glinda. So it is very depressing that the one fighting for everyone's rights is maybe ultimately not the one who gets them. So that part's kind of.
Well, I was gonna say the dialogue is kind of predictable too, because as I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, like yeah, Glinda's gonna say that, and then sure enough, she says, and I'm like, okay, like this is starting to get really, really predictable. And I would even add too, like when we start to see Dorothy and enter the scene, it's kind of like, okay, well, I know how this is going to play out, so it's not really so much that we're wondering what's going to happen next, but we're just wondering when is it going to happen, right?
Yeah.
It's not the how, but the when kind of deal. Lee, Brendan, what are your thoughts on what we've seen so far at the beginning of this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I think it made sense. Like, you kind of have to double down because, you kind of ended with the, animals being a big part of Elphaba's kind of desire to kind of be in this conflict with the wizard, right? Because the wizard's, been using the animals inappropriately and has this irrational hatred for the animals, which I don't think we really got a conclusion on. But I think it makes sense for you to kind of double down. What I always kind of liked with this is that you have Elphaba that's like the clear evil, and Oz being kind of this place where it's like, oh well, we have to have a face of the good, right? And it's not the wizard, it's not actually even Madame Morrible, which I'll talk about later because I have a lot of questions about her character. But it's like Glinda the good, right? They make this very clear good versus evil type of mechanic, and obviously for Glinda, she doesn't really have any abilities, right? Like she's just a nice person. Well, nice, air quotes, right? But she is just kind of the face, and she kind of gets thrust into this role of being face of like the good that's out there. And really, she's only there for that because, well, number one, she was friends with Elphaba. Number two, she just has this charm about her, this charisma that has people follow her no matter what. So kind of really interesting that Glinda really kind of starts to become like bigger and bigger, more than her character probably deserves.
Well, that kind of goes back to the discussion we were having in part one about how, like, the wizard says you need a enemy to unite the people around. You also need a figurehead to sort of unite the people around that's in opposition and stark contrast to that enemy. So you're propping up Glinda as this good and righteous character that's, the epitome of everything that Oz should be versus the enemy of Elphaba, who is trying to dismantle society as we are. So I think that's kind of where that comes in some ways.
Real fast, that is also the same point that Elphaba makes at the end. She says, "Don't clear my name," and Glinda's like, "Why not?" And she's like, "In order for there to be great good, there has to be great evil."
Yep.
Just like at the end of The Dark Knight, too.
Yeah. So I think again, I haven't seen the stage musical, but the discourse that I've seen about it over the years has been this is kind of where everybody settles on Act 1 versus Act 2, even in the stage show, is they feel like two very different tones and two very different stories. Maybe, I don't know if that strikes you as accurate, Bradley, but
well, sorry, Brendan just saw me put a fistful size of potato chips in my mouth and then asked me a question.
It didn't occur to me in real time. I apologize. But I was more or less looking for a thumbs up from you, and then I would have affirmed, as it were. But yeah, so this seems to be kind of where it is we have this huge time jump, but we also have this huge tonal sort of dissonance between the two parts. Yeah. And I remember when we first saw it in theaters, I was unclear exactly how much time had passed. Like, it was clear some time had passed based on, like Bradley said, Elphaba's skills with the broomstick, the laying of the yellow brick road, all that stuff, but it wasn't really clear how well that went. So it was hard for me to kind of gauge where I was in sort of my understanding of the story, as it were, there.
Well, Brendan, let me ask you this, because throughout the movie, Elphaba is painted as this evil figure, and traditionally, when we look at the Wicked Witch, she's green and she's wearing black, so we know she's bad because villains wear, a black color palette. Good people wear like these bright color pastels,
of
like
course.
Glinda, wearing, she's blonde and she's wearing pink. Do you find it kind of ironic that the way that these characters are characterized and the way that we understand them as part one and part two progress? Do you find it ironic how these color palettes are being used to kind of convey what's really going on between these two?
Oh, sure. There's plenty of irony to that. You're definitely right. Certainly, again, I think I mentioned it when we talked about Frankenstein. I'm no expert in like color theory and everything else, but just in a like juxtaposition standpoint and how we use color to communicate. Oh, they wear black, so they're obviously the villain. they wear bright colors, so they're obviously good. It's definitely playing with those notions, both in universe and to us in the movie, even though they're trying to tell us that Glinda is in the wrong and Elphaba's in the right in this particular context.
Yeah, and what I would also add to that too is the fact that Glinda, I mean, for lack of a better word, she's pretty much a tool of the state, right?
Mhm.
She is. I'm going to use the a Marvel reference, but she's kind of like Red Guardian, right? She's this state, she's the state-sponsored hero that everybody can rally around, and then you have, you know, Elphaba, who's out there working outside the system. She's evil. She wants to wreck everything, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of find it hilarious that that not only is Glinda being propped up as like the state-sponsored hero, but in a way she's kind of being given the script as to how she needs to behave too.
Yeah.
Because you know, if you're a hero of the state, you need to say this, this, and this, and you need to do X, Y, and Z in order for, and not only for everybody to kind of get behind you, but in order to continue to get the support from us. Because hey, if you don't, then that flying bubble that you've enjoyed for using for a long time, that's going to go away, and then how are you going to get around? I mean, you're definitely not going to walk. That's never going to work for you.
I was literally about to say a really good point to what you had just said about her being the thing of the state is literally when she's given the bubble, she isn't just given the bubble to be like, this will inspire people. It is literally the phrasing of, because the Wicked Witch flies, we need you to fly as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a really good line towards your point about she isn't just here to be good. She's here to manipulate. You know, that really is a thing about, we don't want you to do this just because of an image, just because we want it to be good, just because of this. It's because the evil can do it. We need to show we can do it too.
Right. So if Steve Rogers has a shield and the super soldier, then Alexei Shostakov needs to have a shield also, you know, because everybody's gotta match up. But besides maintaining an image of being the hero of the state, and I know it's a very cynical thing to say, but I mean, that's how it comes off to me. We also have to deal with the fact that Glinda is also trying to maintain this image of being, well put together. She's, picture perfect. There's nothing wrong with her. And what better way to do that than to marry Prince Fiero, right? and if it hasn't been clear to those watching before, it should be kind of obvious by this point that Fiero, he isn't really feeling it for Glinda, and in a weird sort of way, I kind of feel sorry for Glinda because I kind of get the sense that she really, really does like him, or she really does care for him, right? But as much as she wants this to work, and in a weird sort of way, like, you also sympathize with her because she's so desperate to make this work. Because just as Bach was so keen to try to be with Glinda, I mean, Bradley, to your point, Glinda is trying really, really hard to be with Fiero, and if it means nailing him down and having him take the plunge into marriage, then so be it, as long as he's mine. So what do you guys think of the whole Fiero and Glinda dynamic? Because it starts off as very subtle. They're both being a bit passive aggressive towards one another, but it kind of escalates as we get further and further into the movie. And yes, we will. Might as well mention Elphaba and Fiero do the nasty in the woods. Listen, we're all adults here, so we can discuss it and not giggle like men children that we are. But did you guys sort of feel a bit of sympathy for Glinda, or do you feel like maybe she should have been a bit more aware of what was going on, kind of like bitch read the room kind of situation?
Well, I will say one thing very much in defense of her is I do genuinely believe that Fiero still loves her. I just don't think it's the way that she wants him to. So
how do you mean by that?
So I will say I was in I don't know if you guys know Ragtime.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Ragtime and I played the father, and there's a great thing where he leaves his family for a long period of time for work and for exploration, And he comes back home, and all of a sudden, so in Ragtime, it's very much white versus black for a good chunk of the show. He comes home, and there is a black woman and her baby living in his house, and he's like, yo, what the fuck? But he has a bit of a song where he's like, I don't know what's going on. I came back home, and it's like new music. He's like, it's like someone changed the music. He's like, the world changed without me. He's still trying to hold on to what used to be. I think that I genuinely do believe when they were in school, I think Fiyero had a bit of like interest in Elphaba as a person, and then he was with Glinda. I mean, every time you see them in any of the flashbacks, he's with Glinda. Like he's all about her. But I think now he has seen who Elphaba truly is, and he's like, no, that's who I. You know, they say that true love is not like what you feel about the person, it's like who you are when you're around them. I think he sees like with Elphaba, I can be who I truly am. I feel pulled to the same cause she is, but Glinda is looking at Fiyero and is like really just holding on to the way things used to be, the feelings they used to have for each other when he used to be fully in love with her, and she just can't like move past that. Because I really do think even when you see the scenes in the movie and the same thing in the show, there's clearly a lot of love between the two of them. Like they truly do care about each other. I do just think that she's more holding on to the Fiyero of the past, and he is like, I think with Elphaba, I can be the person I want to be.
But do you think there's like
so
a
yeah.
lack of? But sorry to interrupt, but do you think there's like a lack of honesty on Glinda's part then? Because to your point, Glinda isn't really she isn't really willing to accept that the present Fiyero isn't the same person as past Fiyero, and present Fiyero may not necessarily have the same fire about him when it comes to loving her as maybe he did in the past.
Yeah. Now that is a little hard to say just because we don't see a lot of their relationship when it isn't like in front of the camera. You know, them announcing their engagement. They have that little scene right behind the wall where he's like, let's go be with them. That's if we had a little bit more of that, I think I could speak more confidently on it. But I also don't exactly know what level of like sense of person that Glinda has, because I mean Madame Horrible is straight up murdering girls in chairs, and she's like, yeah, that couldn't be Madame Horrible, of course not. So I don't know exactly how astute her judge of character is. So it's a little hard to say. I definitely think there's some like the horses that have blinders on. I think she's got a bit of that going on, where I don't know if she's not seeing the change in Fiyero or if she's actively refusing to see the change in Fiyero. Because one of those I feel like is a character flaw. One of those is something much more I don't know if like bad on her part, mean spirited maybe. Because if she just doesn't see it, then that's just her character. But if she's choosing to ignore it, nah, that's a goof on your part. It's a little hard to say. I do think though that in the end of Thank Goodness, you hear her start to have a bit of self-realization about we couldn't be happier. Well, it's strange that like the lines start to change. When you talked about it starting getting darker, when it first starts, everything she's laughing, she's giggling, and then after he leaves, all of her lines start happy and end sad. All of a sudden it becomes we couldn't be happier. Well, simply you couldn't be happier. Well, not simply. It's strange, but it seems getting your dreams is a little well complicated. Everything, there's a bit of a cost. There's a bridge you didn't know you're going to cross until you. So it very is much. I think she's starting to get a lot of self-realization that things aren't the way she wants them to be, and they're not the way she thought they were going to be.
Right.
So it is a little hard to say. I will say that the whole thing with her and Fiyero getting married, their marriage, I don't think is in the show. I don't think that's a thing at all. I think maybe it was announced, and I feel like maybe that's still why Bach tries to come back or does come back. But I don't know. This one thing that bothers me in this movie is you don't really get a lot of Fiyero other than God, he points a gun at her for so long. That one scene, he has been pointing that gun at Glinda for like an hour.
It's like, are you gonna pull the trigger or not? Like, I ain't got all day.
Yeah, quick random side note, they have the dumbest looking guns. Like, it looks like a crossbow bolt on top of a green stick. It is so stupid. But it's a little hard to say because I feel like we don't get a whole lot of character development from him. But that's another thing, and even in the show, you don't really get a lot. The focus is the two girls the whole time. Fiero's just sort of a movable consolation prize, to be honest.
Yeah.
So for me personally, right, I feel like Glinda knows that Fiero doesn't share that same sense of relationship that he has for Elphaba, right? I do agree with you, Bradley, that Fiero cares about her, right? And I would say cares about her fairly deeply, but probably not in the way that Glinda wants. And I think we see a scene in the movie where, you know, he talks where they're like kind of like talking behind the scenes, and all of a sudden, he finds out like, oh, I wasn't aware that we're engaged, and obviously, Glinda's the one that's really pushing it, and you can tell, or I think, unless like you're totally ignoring the situation, that Fiero doesn't have that same level of compassion. I think he even makes a reference like, you know what, if you're happy, I'm happy, but they go in for a kiss, and then he kind of like shrugs her off, or they don't, she kind of just puts her head against his chest. And, I think I feel like some of that is Glinda. She's being thrust into the spotlight and she doesn't know what to do with it. I feel like a lot of this is, kind of like a charade, right? Like, the fact that, we mentioned that, Glinda's got a Elphaba's got a broomstick, right? And then what we have to do.
I'm sorry, I was dying. Elphaba's got a boomstick. Man, that's a movie I'd pay good money to see.
That'd be a hell of a change. Yeah, there we go. We get a little bit of boomstick in there, but
hey, we can AI that shit. I mean,
yeah, right. So then Glinda, well, she has to now fly somehow, right? So they build a contraption for her. So like, I feel like, unfortunately for Glinda, like she's really kind of, I feel like being put in the spotlight that she doesn't really want to be, and it's hard for her to kind of balance things out. I feel like because she has such strong feelings with Fiero, she kind of pushes it to the side, and she's like, well, you know what? I'm happy, and because I'm happy, I don't want to do anything to rock the boat, even though I think deep down she knows that what she's doing is not right, right? And I look at Glinda and Fiero kind of the same way I look at Nessa and Bach, right? Now, obviously, I would say Glinda and Fiero have, I would say, a stronger connection there. But I feel like in both cases, like the female character really latches on to her male counterpart to a part where it becomes toxic. And I think that's one of those things that I feel like I struggled with when I was looking at this, because, Fiero kind of just feels like, this guy that's just kind of going with everything. And he doesn't really have an identity until later on when Elphaba shows up later. But he kind of just doesn't seem to really want to voice his own opinion about things, and it kind of makes him feel a little bit weaker because of it. But I do feel like Glinda knows that deep down, Fiero's not into her the same way. And that kind of makes me always feel like Glinda is overhead with everything that's going on.
Can I just add that here at the Movie Pope and StoryProof podcast, we're not saying that all women are latching onto men. We're only saying it within the context of this movie. So any feminists out there, please do not come after us. We're not painting you all with a broad brush. Just want to get that out of the way, just in case.
I will add, I have a slightly different. What?
You said I like 12 times.
I'll add, I have a slightly different read on Fiero. I think in that moment where he's having the conversation with Glinda behind the little bandstand area there, I believe there's a line where he talks about how they should be out there looking for Elphaba. So he's like trying to actively find her. I think his goal at the beginning of this movie is to be a part of this guard that the wizard has set up as a front to go be able to find Elphaba.
Yes.
In some way.
100% agreed. Yep.
So I don't have as much of an issue with where Fierro stands in all that. I mentioned in part one, I enjoy the songs Thank Goodness and No One Mourns the Wicked for sort of the verbal irony in everything, because that entire song is just Glinda coming to that realization, like she's really not happy with anything that's going on right now in this moment. Like she should be happy. Everything is good for her. Everything is great for her. But nothing is actually making her happy, because how could it? She doesn't have her best friend there with her doing all this. That's why she's going to push further in the movie continuously to get Elphaba to come back into the fold until until Glinda has her big realization that, okay, I can't bring her back into this. I need to go to her after they kill Nessarose and after everything goes on there. So that's kind of where I'm at with all this in the forefront so far.
Well, Brendan, let me ask you this: do you feel like the happiness that she's experiencing, is it her happiness, or is it the happiness that that the wizard and Madame Warble and everybody else is telling her she needs to be happy about?
Oh, it's absolutely what they're telling her to be happy about. I don't think she's happy at all with any of this. I think it's all just a charade.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, another thing too, that I want to add is the fact that it almost feels like Glinda is forcing this marriage upon Fierro's, because she figures, well, if I can't be happy by myself, I'm going to have this person here who used to make me feel happy, and maybe he'll make me feel happy.
right.
But it's kind of like, well, that's not really how relationships work, because if you put everything on that one person, you're putting all these tremendous expectations that they cannot possibly and conceivably live up to, and then you end up both just being two miserable people who are in a relationship where you're really not getting anything out of the other, really.
Right.
So yeah, I totally agree with you on that, Brendan, but I also feel a bit of sympathy for her, because it's like, well, she's trying to find a sense of happiness in this life, whatever little scraps she can find, but it's like whatever she does, it kind of doesn't go her way, kind of like with Elphaba, where she tries her best to help people, but it just ends up having the exact opposite effect. And you guys mentioned something interesting too, because it leads us into the next point where we meet with Nessa, right? So in the first movie, after the wizard puts out that APB basically saying, yeah, Elphaba Throp is public enemy number one. I mean, we need to go after her and we need to take her down. We find out that that Nessa's and Elphaba's father dies from a heart attack. So Nessa becomes the new governor of Munchkin Land. And this is where this is where we see the parallel love story take place, because at least with Glinda and Fierro, they have a sort of relationship. It's to use your parlance, Brendan, it's a charade, but it's a relationship nevertheless. Whereas with what we see with Bach and Nessa, it's like it's non-existent, right? Because apart from that brief moment at the dance where they're having fun and dancing with each other, Bach isn't really, he's not really into Nessa, and Nessa is just pretty much kind of trying to force it upon him, and I think she even kind of enjoys the whole power play of, hey, I'm the governor, Bach, do you want to have a game of chess with me later on? And it's like, yeah, okay, Madam Governor. It's like, I told you to call me Nessa. So what we see here with Nessa as the governor is she's pretty much showing Bach who wears the pants in this quote unquote relationship. But we also kind of see things kind of turn south, because Bach mentions that this is the last time you're going to see me. And Nessa, the way that Nessa says this line, it made me want to put my fist through the monitor, because she's like, oh, this is not the last time you're going to see me. And then it cuts to the train station where he tries to leave. And then there's like this executive order where, yeah, nobody's going to leave Munchkin Land. Like you're all staying here, and that's the end of it. So I just want to get your thoughts on the whole Munchkin Land being locked down. to where we've got closed borders, nobody can enter or leave. But also, how do we feel about Nessa and Bach's relationship? And I don't want to spoil it, but is there a happy ending, or is this one of those things where it was never going to work for either one of them?
I think their relationship is perfectly healthy. I think it's great. I think they are a loving couple. And no, it's horrible. It's,
Yeah, I was like, is Bradley okay? I think he's having a stroke. What's going on?
Hey, Bach, I'm the governor. Take your shirt off and do it real slowly for me.
dude, I will say, and talking a bit more about Bach, have you guys seen the deleted scene from the first movie with he and Elphaba on the train platform?
No.
I'm not
It-
sure.
I am so furious that it got deleted because it's just a scene. So this is before Glinda and Elphaba are going to leave for the Emerald City,
Yeah.
and this is where they're having. So Bach is sitting off. I think Bach's off by himself, and Glinda or Elphaba comes up, and they're talking for a minute, and Elphaba acknowledges the fact that Bach has feelings for Glinda, not Nessa Rose, and then she says something about we're friends. You can say the truth to me. And he basically is kind of like, oh, well, what about you and Fiero? And she's like, I don't have any feelings for Fiero. And he kind of grins. He's like, I thought we were telling the truth to each other. Like,
Ooh.
it is such a nice moment between those two characters, and those sons of bitches deleted it. It's so good. But this is, when I talked earlier about the idea of Glinda holding on to the Fiero that she knew, dude, Bach doesn't know Glinda. Like, he sees a picture of her getting married and is like, okay, I have to go confess my undying love for her. Like, dude, what the fuck, man? You're like a friend with her. You knew her, I assume, because that is one thing I will say as well as Brendan. I don't know what kind of time frame. I'm guessing years, but I don't know how many. I wouldn't imagine too many because the characters don't really look that aged up. But the fact that Fiero is captain of the guard, I don't imagine that's an intro position for him. So I imagine it has been a bit of time. But yeah, the fact that Bach is just like immediately going to drop everything. Like, dude, you don't know her. Like, that's just fucked up. You have the image of her that you had when you were infatuated with her in school. But yeah, the Nessa Rose stuff. And I will say the scene with her and the shoes and casting the spell, all of that is exactly how it plays out in the show. Every single detail. I do like one thing I do really like that they do well in the movie is the idea that the Grimoire is very smart. So that when someone talks about what kind of spell they want, it just flips to the page. Like, it really knows. I like that. I think that's really cool. It almost makes me think of the book from Hocus Pocus, where the book is very much alive and a character in the movie. But yeah, it's a very, very dark thing where it's a very like abusive relationship between the two of them, where one of them is desperately holding on to a relationship that was never there, and the other one can't really leave. And then I will say that when he does go to leave, he does say, this won't be the last time we see each other. He's like, we will see each other again. And she's basically like, I'm counting on it.
Yeah, and I'm like, that is something that a woman in her position would definitely say, because because to your point, like, she's very desperate to make this work. So my follow-up question for you then is, was the Nessa and Bach storyline prevalent in the musical, or is it something that's kind of been added to the movie?
It's pretty much exactly in the show the way it is here. The Munchkin Land thing where he's at the train station, that's an added scene, but in the show it happened because he comes back in and he's mad about it. So he's basically saying one of those show don't tell type things because of the show they don't have time for it. But the biggest thing with Nessa Rose in the movie is because you get so much more of the wizard and so much more of Madame Morrible in the freaking show. Nessa Rose is the most evil person in this show. It's not even close. I mean, she is the bad person.
Yeah, because doesn't she reference the fact that she's the Wicked Witch of the East,
Yep.
or
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it in the theater show, especially because you don't get a whole lot of time with the other two villains. I mean, she is, and her turn almost comes out of nowhere, because when you first see her there with Bach, it looks like a kind of cute thing, and then through their conversation, you're like, oh, this is no bueno. This isn't what I thought it was, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. And I like the fact that she tries to cast a spell, and of course it shrinks his heart. I'm like, yeah, the heart that wasn't really yours anyway. It's a very on the nose imagery type thing. I will say the first time I watched it, when she said something about his heart, immediately I'm like, holy shit, he's gonna be the Tin Man.
Yeah.
Dude, Jesus, Bach in once he becomes the Tin Man, dude, he is a character straight out of a fucking horror movie.
Yes.
Like, he looks terrifying. The way he is screaming and that axe, and he is filled with so much rage and hate. I dig it. I was like, hell yes, Bach, my boy, let's go. You only get, like I said, a little bit of that in the show, because I imagine they don't want to make that poor guy wear that ridiculous costume for too long. And it is one of those things where I think he like falls down behind a couch, and then they have a little scene, so he's like trying to get into the Tin Man costume behind the couch while laying on the ground. But yeah, it's I would say the darkest relationship in this, and it's very unfortunate because it's maybe not relatable but understandable. Like, she just has feelings for him, and he doesn't have those for her, and she just doesn't know how to handle it, and that sucks. But obviously what she does, very evil, very bad. Don't do that. But it sucks. It is a depressing relationship.
But she's also, but I would say she's also very naive as well, because at least with Elphaba, she kind of knows what's going on. She's aware of what the Grimoire can do. So she's a bit more careful, because as we saw in part one, when she reads that incantation, like we see the monkeys sprouting their wings, and it's a very, very painful process. Whereas here, it's like Nessa Rose very much thinks of it as something that will be a cure-all, will fix everything. But she's not really aware, and I would even say I don't think she really cares too much about what the consequences are, as long as she gets what she wants, right? But in the end,
she immediately blames Elphaba. Like, 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like,
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, please, because that part drove me insane, right? So, number one, right, Bach has like this weird parasocial relationship with Glinda, right? Like, let's be real here. It is totally like he'd be the epitome of like an internet guy that's like obsessed with something that he can never get, right? That's what.
Lee, I kind of get the sense it's kind of like how when we were teenagers we would have a poster of of someone we like on our wall.
Oh, sure.
Don't lie. We've all had those posters on our wall at one point, and we just fantasize about, oh, like, if only I could spend a day with her, I could show her I could totally be the guy she wants. But we all know that ain't ever going to happen. Like, as much as I want to happen between me and Sydney Sweeney, it ain't going to happen. So
yeah, he takes it the extra step where it becomes really awkward, right? So that's the first thing. So
yeah,
one, like, I like when Nessa, right, is reading for the Grimoire, and she starts to read it. Elphaba comes up to her, she's like, "Stop! Don't do it!" And she just continues to read. I'm like, Elphaba, slap the shit out of your sister.
I was thinking that. I'm like, Elphaba, kick her wheelchair or something. Like,
yeah, like, just the whole time I'm like, no, you're not doing anything. You're just like in Willy Wonka, where he's like, oh no, please stop, don't do it. It's just like that, right? Like, it's like you have an opportunity to do something, and you're just like, no, never mind. We're just gonna let whatever happens, right? So then, Elphaba tries to like save him, or I mean, she kind of, I guess, saves him the only way that she can, right? By making him the Tin Man, he's able to quote unquote live. But
yeah,
I don't know how much you want to put into that, but I think she does what she can. But the other thing that drives me crazy is like Bach confronts, like, so Elphaba leaves, right? Bach confronts Nessa, like, what have you done to me? And Nessa's like, oh, well, it was Elphaba, she did it. And then you just like see like Bach get really angry, but then he doesn't actually do anything to Nessa. He just is like, oh, I guess I got to go after Elphaba now. And I just didn't understand that. I'm like, what do you mean? You were there when she was like doing this incantation, right? Like you were there, you witnessed what happened, right? You knew that Nessa was the one that started all this shit happening. So it was really weird to me when he's just like, he's like the Terminator and he just focuses his like anger at something else that pops up. And I'm like, why, right? Why not have this conflict with Nessa that you know is the one that started all this? That it just drove me insane how that whole thing kind of played out, at least for me personally.
But Lee, is he that gullible to believe, the lie that Nessa told him, or is it one of those things that he's just been so suckered into the propaganda that he'll believe anything so long as Elphaba is the target? Because remember,
that's a good point. Because
remember when Elphaba shows up, like he goes after her immediately, right? And even when Nessa Rose reads that incantation, he kind of get the feeling that he still wants to go after Elphaba because she's the one who kind of, I guess for whatever reason, like he feels like his animosity needs to be directed towards her, even though Nessa Rose was the one who shrunk his heart in the first place. And to Elphaba's credit, like she tried to do something to kind of fix this. I mean, granted, it wasn't ideal because now he's a tin man, but at least she was trying to do something, whereas Nessa Rose was just basically picking up whatever was available and hoping it would work,
Honestly, Luka, that is an absolutely fair thing to question. We live in a day and age where I feel like you can literally see something wrong happening and people will do everything they can, whatever mental gymnastics they can prove that, like, hey, that's not that bad, or that's not really what's going on. So you bring up an excellent point, right? I would hope that as, someone that's watching that whole thing happen, that you would at least have some type of like, hey, she was, doing this, you're already in this like kind of turmoil, right, with the relationship going on. But yeah, I mean, I guess you bring up a good point. I think as an audience member, like, I think it's very clear that we know what Nessa's motivation is. Bradley mentioned that she's like the most hated person in it, so I feel like it's very much on brand for her character to be like that. But yeah, I just found that so odd that he just seems to kind of like have this irrational like hatred for Elphaba, which to your point, right? There's a lot of propaganda going on. It's kind of being instilled with that.
I was going to say, in this, he is immediately aggressive towards her before any spell has been cast. When he comes back in the room and she's there, he is like, "What the fuck are you doing here?"
Yes,
and she's immediately like, "I'm still the same person you knew in school. I'm not going to hurt you." But he is immediately aggressive towards her, even before having his heart, squished.
So let me ask. So is he mad about the fact that his heart got shrunk, or is he mad because he got turned into this tin man? That's the thing.
I think everything. Yeah, it's all. I mean, he was mad about Glinda. He's mad about Nessa Rose. He's mad about Elphaba. Next thing you know, he's screaming and he wakes up and he's metal. He's just like, "Yo, what the fuck, man? It's a Wednesday afternoon. Why is all this shit happening to me right now?"
He's having a fucking rough day, man.
I was gonna say, like, can you imagine? Like, he looks down there and it's like, oh, like it's not there anymore. Like, I would be totally pissed off about that.
I will say there is something that I see a lot in character development and character writing is when you have a lot and a lot is taken from you, the thing that moves in to fill that space is anger, is rage. So the fact that he is basically just a rage machine for the rage machine. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because we never see him past. We never see him after her quote unquote death. We don't even see what his life would be like after that. Like, what happens to the Tin Man after he supposedly gets a heart again?
Yeah.
Does he just go live? I do love the things that's like it's like, how do we go from this to this? And it shows the original Tin Man when he's doing his little song and dance in the original, and he's like, toot toot, he's like slapping his belly, and then it shows Bach with an axe being like, "I'll be heartless killing her." You're like, Jesus, okay.
Well, another thing too, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself here. I mean, Bach is the only person who doesn't really fully accept what's happened to him, right? Because at least with Fierro, like he he makes peace with it. And well, the lion, I guess he really did find courage after all. But Bach just comes off as someone who I don't think he ever gets the resolution that he wants, because he can't go back to being who he was. I mean, that's for sure. And and obviously, being a Tin Man, he's not he's not going to have the same privilege that he used to have when he was flesh and blood. So he's kind of in that in between state where he's like, should I accept myself for who I am, or am I just going to be a literal rage machine going forward?
Yeah, that's fair. He has now become Elphaba. He is now the one that will be shunned specifically for the way he looks for the rest of his days.
Brendan, I know we I know we left you out of the conversation. What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Oh no, you guys are good. I was just taking in what all you guys were saying. My only real note about this is I think this plot line kind of serves as like the most extreme cautionary tale type of, like, this is where Fiyero and Glinda could go to if it were seriously just the most unhealthy thing possible. Because in the same way that Glinda, as we discussed, is kind of trying to hold on to what was, that is Nessarose's entire thing. Like, she's seen her family become kind of this pariah, in that Elphaba is now enemy number one. Her father died of a heart attack from the absolute disappointment of Elphaba becoming enemy number one. She's been thrust into this. It's somewhere deep in her heart she knows that Bach does not have these feelings for her, so she's seeing him trying to escape her, constantly trying to do this. So she's just clinging and clinging and clinging to the point that she's making it impossible for any Munchkin to get out of Munchkin land at any point whatsoever. So I think that's kind of what this particular plot point is supposed to be. And it ultimately ends up devolving into Bach becoming the Tin Woodsman and just having this absolute awful day as it is.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where it kind of shows us what exactly is obsession, really, because it's not love in the true sense, because Bach never really had any feelings for her, and I would even go so far as to add she's kind of dwelling on that one night at the dance where he danced with her, and it's like, well, surely you must have felt something for me because you danced with me, right? So that means you must like me. And Bach, for his part, is probably saying, well, no, it was just a pity fuck. Like, that's all it was. Like, it didn't mean anything. And, and to tell her something like that is, just sends her over the edge. Now I will say this. I am glad that she does get her comeuppance, because as much as you wanted to feel bad for her in part one, who she becomes in part two, it's like, well, what happens to her at the end? Yeah, you kind of deserved it.
Yeah, the one thing that does kind of bother me with Nessarose and Bach is I wish I knew if they were dating in school. Like, I wish I knew if they were officially a couple, because when you look at the flashbacks, I'm like, they look like a couple. But I'm curious if they were just friends with an unspoken thing, or if Bach was like, no, we're boyfriend, girlfriend, this is great. And then one day was just like, nah, no, we're not. I don't know. It, ultimately it wouldn't excuse what she does anymore. I just wish I knew that. I just wish I had an answer for that.
Right, because then it kind of gives us, an idea as to like what happened then to how did it lead to this point now,
Yeah, again, it wouldn't justify what she did, but I think it would color it in a bit more for me. So I kind of wish that was even just a throwaway line.
So
I don't know.
So after Elphaba takes the blame for turning Bach into a Tin Man, which was really just a way to save his life, Elphaba decides to head off to the Emerald City, and she runs into Glinda. And Bradley, you mentioned this already, but Glinda is trying her best to kind of bring Elphaba on side, because up until that point she genuinely believes that Elphaba can still be saved and kind of be brought into the light, right? She doesn't have to be public enemy number one. She can work within the system, and she can be a friend. And for and for a moment, you kind of start to wonder if maybe this is the point where things start to change. But when you look down the timeline, you see, oh, there's like another hour and 10 minutes to go. That's not going to really fly, right? But we definitely see the point where Glinda and Fiyero are getting ready to tie the knot, right? The wizard and Elphaba have a heart to heart, and I mean, there may be a bit of a compromise on either part. Elphaba's conceding, some things to the wizard. The wizard is conceding some things to Elphaba. So, is this the turning point? Are we starting to see things kind of change for these two? Like, can they really, really be reconciled? Lee, what are your thoughts on that?
Man, I'm sorry. Which two characters were we just talking about? I'm so sorry.
Well, I'm following your outline here, and I'm on the part where Elphaba returns to the Emerald City and runs into Glinda, and and the wizard, because because the wizard is, well, at least from my perspective, it looks like he's getting ready to welcome Elphaba back with open arms. And Elphaba's like, okay, well, I see you're definitely compromising. I see you're definitely giving in, or at least conceding to some of my demands. I think we can be, one big happy family. But it's not exactly the way it plays out.
I don't know. I for a brief moment you might think that, but I think we all kind of are expecting when's the other shoe gonna drop, and it doesn't take too long for that to happen, right? So he kind of concedes, like, you know what, I'll free the flying monkeys, right? Like, that'll be my compromise. Like, hey, cool, bring you on board to do that. And then, like, the main flying monkey, and I forget the name, it begins with a C, right?
Chisbury, I think.
Yes, thank you. Yes. He kind of reveals, like, oh, behind here there's more animals, right? And you go down there and they're all in cages. She sees the Go Professor. And that's kind of her moment where it's like, oh, he continues to kind of throw this facade, right? He continues to kind of like try to broker these deals, but he's not very genuine about it. And I feel like that was something, going into this, that deep down he's not going to change, right? Like, this is not something that's going to go over well. And I like the fact that, this kind of almost furthers her conviction that, hey, you know what? Even when you're trying to do something nice, you still have all this other shit that's kind of clouded in the background that you're purposely keep it hidden. So no matter what, I can never trust you to truly go back or to truly be a man of your word. So yeah, I you knew it was going to happen. Maybe you weren't expecting it to happen that quickly, but it did happen quite fast.
Yeah, it sucks because there is a moment where you're like, if the wizard had just stopped, this hatred of the animals. I mean, I feel like everyone could have had a genuinely happy ending from this, but he gives her the monkeys, doesn't mention anything about all the other animals. Because I think even if he had been, look, you're asking for these, tell you what, I'll do you one, because she knows that animals have been captured. She doesn't necessarily know where they are, clearly, but she knows it's happened. So if he had just been like, you want the monkeys freed, I'll do you one better. Tell you what, I'll free all the animals right now. I will free every single animal that we have. You can do with them what you will. Instead, he's like, sure, I'll do the bare minimum of what you asked, and then leaves. And you're like, bro, come on. If you had just gone a little further. Because she wants to be good. She wants to be loved, accepted. Glinda wants her friend back. And the wizard still wants access to Elphaba's powers. So I'm like, literally, if you had just been a little smarter, bro, you could have had it. But no, I will say, Chesterly, I think is his name. Chester, that's it. I really like him. I'm not gonna lie. On the stage show, they fucked him up. He looks like Gollum. He's like bald, stringy hair. I'm like, that's not a good look, bud. I think he looks really good in this, and I really, really like how loyal they are to Elphaba and to Fiyero. I don't know why. That's just one of those things I really like. That once she frees them, they're like, okay, we are 100% on your team. Let's fucking go. I like that. And I think their design looks really good. But yeah, I will say I really like when she breaks the window coming into like where Glinda's room is, and Glinda comes out, looks around, she doesn't see her, and she's like, Elphaba Throp, I know you're out here. I'm like, that's so sweet. Like just the way that she's still talking to her, like they care about each other so much, and it just sucks that you can see a happy ending for everyone, and yeah, like you guys said, you just know it's not gonna happen. You just know it, but you're so close.
Brendan?
Um, yeah, I'm trying to process all the thoughts so far. Yeah, I really don't have anything. I'm sorry, guys.
No, that's good. That's good. I mean, but here's the thing. I mean, Bradley, to your point, it's like the wizard is just trying to make himself a hateable character. That's the thing, because it's like, because if you're doing the bare minimum, it's like, okay, well, how does this make you, a laudable person? Because if the whole point is to try to, reinstate animal rights, not to go after them, freeing the monkeys, well, yeah, I mean, that's a start, but you could do more. Like, so it kind of makes you wonder, like, what exactly is his agenda here? Because we know he doesn't like the talking animals, but we're never introduced as to why he doesn't like them. And yeah, I mean, he's like a genius who knows how to build all these things, but he's also a con man too, right?
Yeah.
He pretty much says it in that musical number. So you kind of have to wonder, like, is he intentionally just trying to be a bad guy? Like, what? Like, because I'm watching, I'm like, dude, I want to root for you, I want to like you, dude, but you're just saying and doing all the wrong things, and it's like at some point you just throw your arms up in the air, like, okay, fine, fuck it, you want me to hate you, fine, I'll hate you. Like, I can't win with this.
Yeah, I will say you absolutely hit the nail on the head a minute ago when you were like, I wish I knew what the hell he was doing with these animals. Because it doesn't seem like he's killing them, because some of the animals he's got, they went missing a while ago. So, he's had some of them for a hot minute. So if there was something about a purpose for them, it would make a lot more sense, because it really is. It's like he wanted the yellow brick road. He wanted Elphaba. He wants Glinda, the face of good. And I mean, how many political points could he win by saying, I brought the Wicked Witch back into the fold, and now she's going to help? Like, he would have everything his greedy little heart desires, but he kind of chooses to basically sacrifice it for keeping the animals in cages, and I don't know why.
I mean,
I
the
don't
high
know what
evolutionary,
purpose that serves.
the high evolutionary had a better reason for doing this than the wizard. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
I like to think that a bunch of animals like maimed his family and killed them.
Yeah, it's not really his face; it's just a mask he wears because he got mauled by a raccoon. So
Yeah, like
that's just something.
a
Some
bunch of goats
throwaway
killed his
line.
parent.
But another thing too, because I mean to go back to Glinda and Fiyero. I mean, they're just carrying on as if nothing's happening, right? So so when the animals get released, and I'll tell you this, a part of me was thinking, because they never really get to that part where they kiss and they seal the deal, right? It's kind of like they're just getting up to that point, and then the animals like burst in like it's Jumanji, and Fiero's like, oh, thank God I don't have to marry this bitch, and he just runs off, and Glinda's just looking around like, what the fuck just happened here? Like, my whole world is ruined. Like, I like, it's at that point where I think she's having a breakdown, because she's trying to process what's going on here. She's tried for so long to try to bring everybody together. They come together, and then they realize, yeah, we're not going to work this out. And she's like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah, no, that's fair. It does especially suck. I think for her, again, everyone is right on the verge of getting everything they want, and then it just goes to shit. And she has that happen more than once. She says during Defying Gravity, she's like, Elfie, just say you're sorry. Like, you can still have everything you wanted. We can still live here together. We can be together. Like, everything we have is right here. You just have to say you're sorry. You just have to give in. And Elphaba never does.
But it's a
And it,
child, but it's almost like a childish way of looking at the world, though.
oh yeah, it
and
is.
and that's the thing that kind of infuriates me about Glinda is, bless her, like she really does want everything to be hunky dory, but it's such a childlike way of looking at the world, and it's like.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just want to grab her and shake her and just say, hey, this isn't exactly how things work. Like, you have to understand that there are shades of gray and nuances, and that sometimes, whether you like it or not, people are dicks. The wizard is a dick, and yes, Elfie can be a bit of a bitch sometimes too. That's just the way the world works. But she kind of just breaks everything down to black and white, or in this case, black and pink, and it just comes back and blows up in her face, because then she can't, because later on she comes to realize that, oh, Fiero liked you, like, you of all people.
Mhm.
Like, it's like, okay, so now she's going back to her days at Shiz, where she's just decided, I'm going to be a total bitch about you, because you took everything that I've ever wanted in life, and this is what I wanted in life, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, and I think this
Yeah.
for me is the most frustrating part that I had for Glinda, right? Because Fiora runs off with Elphaba, right? And she's, coming to that realization, oh, he never really loved me, or he was always in love with Elphaba. And I definitely get Glinda's frustration with him, right? Because she feels that for all this time, Elphaba's always kind of hid this from her, right? Or has always been kind of, had this relationship with Fiora in the past. So I feel like she has all this happening. But one of the most frustrating things is, they're kind of talking, right? The wizard and Madame Marble, they're talking about how do we get to Elphaba, and Glinda mentions like, hey, you should go after her sister, and that was just like it. I understand she's frustrated. I wonder at what stage do you go a step too far, right? Now,
Yeah.
obviously, Nessa, not a very nice character, right? I don't think anyone's agreeing that, that we want to see Nessa live or anything like that. But that was such a harsh moment for me when she says that, because I'm like, gosh, like now you're. It feels like we're trying to show you, or we want you to kind of, have this, kind of warming moment with Elphaba, but as soon as something doesn't go your way, you kind of act like a child, and then we obviously know that Nessa gets killed because of the suggestion. Now, I know that for a fact that Glinda didn't know that Nessa was going to get killed or something was going to happen, but if you put the thought out there, like, hey, you need to go after the sister, I feel like, I don't know, I felt like she was taking it a step too far.
It was a really disturbing moment, because at that point, like, you're just thinking, oh, she's very much childlike. She kind of has a naive way of looking at the world, but when she makes that suggestion, it's like, oh, bitch, like that's cold. Like you
Yeah.
crossed the line right there, man.
And I will say this is a moment where the writing is different in the stage show than it is here. In the stage show, there's much more of a conversation in the background of like the wizard and Mormon would be like, how do we get her? What do we do? We don't know what to do. There's a bit more time. In this, it's like, she's gone. What do we do? Kill the sister. Like, it is so immediate. It is not that fast in the stage show. Also, in the stage show, she has a few lines about spreading the rumor. And then I think even then they're like, well, we don't know. And she's like, do not hurt Nessa. She's very emphatic about it. She's like, don't hurt her, don't touch her, don't mess with her. Just do a rumor.
That's so much better. No.
Yeah, and that's why in
so
this, I'm
better.
like, in this, it makes her come off a little more genuinely evil. But yeah, in the show, there is at least one line about do not hurt Nessa. She's my friend. Just do a rumor. And then when she leaves is when Morable's like, I'm gonna drop a house on that bitch.
But
Exact quote from the show.
yeah,
And
that's the thing, though.
frustrated to change that.
Well, and that's the thing.
Yeah, and I don't know why. They had the time they didn't have to rush through it. My God, this movie is fucking 2.5 hours. Like they could have done it. Or even if you want to change it, fine. It's just they make the heel turn, I think, too fast. It doesn't hit the same. And then the wording isn't as emphatic about do not hurt her. So it makes it seem more like if she gets hurt, it's not my fault. I'm not the one throwing houses. And it's that part I think is bad.
But that's the thing, though, because as soon as she makes that suggestion, it's like, well, it's going to be a much harder climb for her to get to that part where she becomes Glinda the Good. Because how exactly would you justify something like that? Because if you're supposed to be the good witch, well, you did make a suggestion that you should go after the sister, right? And it's like, well, I mean, that's a pretty big skeleton you're hiding in your closet if anybody were to find out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's
I feel like you could definitely make the argument that that was not her plan, was for the sister to die, right? Like I genuinely feel that way.
In the movie, she does say start a rumor, but
yeah,
she's not emphatic enough about not hurting her to get by with it, I think.
yeah, but that's part for the course for Glinda because she doesn't really push back, you know, in most of these scenes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Was I remember specifically in the movie they had that line about starting a rumor, but it's interesting that they cut the one line that is most important out of that, which is "Do not hurt her. She is my friend." So it does kind of hurt the overall arc for Glinda becoming, like you were saying, Luka, the Glinda the Good, the best version of herself in the end. At this point,
right. Crazy how that there's just like those 6 words would have made such a dramatic impact, at least for me, on how I feel for that character.
Yeah, and I don't think it helps that in the movie she says, "Go after the sister, start a rumor, peace," and she's gone, and you're like, "That was fast." Yeah, I don't know the reasoning behind it, the choice behind it. I think it's a bad change, and it's a frustrating character change that I just don't like very much.
But but then that leads us into Madame Morrible, whom we haven't heard in a hot second. I mean, she's the one who kind of takes it to this really extreme conclusion, and that's what I find really disturbing about part 2 is that everything gets taken to its extreme conclusion. Like, and you kind of have to wonder, like, does it really make the characters more likable? Like, is that the mission? Like, what exactly are you trying to do here? Because Nissa Rose cast that spell that shrinks Bach's heart, right? And then we've got Morrible who takes that suggestion from Glinda and decides, well, she's not going to believe a rumor, but if we harm her, that's definitely going to change things a bit, and that's going to make her come to the realization that we mean business. And it's like, well, what? And it's the universal question that I've been asking, throughout these reviews is, what exactly is the point of all of this? Because whatever your intentions were, you're not really getting that at the end.
Yeah, I'm very interested. I wish there was something, because there's not in the stage show either. I wish I knew what Madame Morrible was trying to do. Was she just trying to create a storm? Was she intentionally trying to rip a house out of the ground from a different plane of existence and drop it on a bitch in a wheelchair? Like, what the fuck was her thought process?
I still don't understand. Like, so we watched 2 of these films, right? Why, like, Madame Morrible to me is way stronger, like, magic-wise than Elphaba. Like, we see a lot more from her than we ever see from Elphaba. Like, I don't understand how. Like, in this whole thing, right? I think we've only seen 2 people that can legitimately use magic, right? Am I crazy? Yeah. But I feel like we only see 2, right? So, like, she's been doing the sorcery class. Like, who are you having sorcery class for? Because as far as we know, no one else can use magic other than you, that we don't really understand why. And like I said, you have, like, the powers of, like, Storm from X-Men. Like, holy shit. Like, you can sit there and you're, like, creating, like, cyclones. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, you're so strong. And then it's weird how, and I get that, like, for the Grimoire, right? I definitely feel like there's hints that it kind of controls, or it kind of will, like, reflect stuff depending on who's trying to read from it. But I always thought it was weird because it's like they try to talk up, like, oh, Elphaba, you're so strong, you should be able to read from this. And I'm like, well, why why can't Madame Horrible do it? I know they like say like she can read like a few words, but holy shit, she seems to be way more potent as a sorcerer or magician than anybody else out there. And
Wait. So how's it that Nessa Rose was able to read from the Grimoire? Then?
I don't know. Those are the things that bothered me, right? Because yes, it's magic, right? You really shouldn't like sit there and put a whole lot of stock into it because it's like, well, you're just gonna like Nessa's just reading off gibberish, and it's like, oh no, you're not reading the spell right. So like, what? You can just say like random words and it's just gonna happen? Like, I don't understand. Like,
something happened because she read it and Bach's heart shrunk. Like something definitely happened.
My understanding is that the magic can come from you, but the magic can also come from the book. I believe when Nessa Rose read it, because she was reading it wrong, that magic, I believe, was coming from the book. But because she's because she's a sister with Elphaba, that's a very easy thing to kind of hand wave away to say maybe she's got a bit of magic in her too, but
that's
not
fair.
enough because clearly she can't read it. For me, I think that's one of those things. I don't really think they felt the need to explain it because they were probably like, whatever. But it does make a weird plot point. For Madame Horrible, my thought is just maybe that because she's had her powers for so much longer and she's gotten to practice and study in a safe environment as opposed to Elphaba, who got magic and then became a domestic terrorist the next day. I think that's maybe not the because in No Good Deed, she's reading the spell to try to save Piero, and she's even saying like, "What is this chanting? I don't even know what I'm reading. Like, I don't even know what I should try." So there's so much that she has access to, but doesn't know how to use it, how best to use it. You are correct. The Madame Horrible's powers are in the theater show. I think she does a little bit of like she moves a cloud and then she makes it not rain, and then all of a sudden she's like cyclone from another dimension. You're like, fuck, that escalated quick.
Yeah, she's definitely an Omega level being. So,
dude, it is bonkers. And like, I still just Nessa Rose just happened to be there. She dropped a house on her. What if she'd been indoors and all you had was this little wooden house and she's in a castle?
How stupid are you to go rolling around in a wheelchair in the middle of a maelstrom when everybody else is going inside? Like, I'm like, lady, do you not know what's going on here?
Dude, I will say, seeing this one in IMAX, dude, fuck that storm. It was so loud. I was literally cupping both of them. I was like plugging both of my ears. I was like, I get IMAX. I'm like, the sound. I'm like, people are going to suffer hearing damage from this damn movie.
Well, Bradley, you were out on a cruise. How do you not know the ship was rocking back and forth?
That is true. It was.
Well, here's another thing that that I wanted to bring up. I didn't bring it up in the first part, but if Glinda was under the tutelage of Madame Horrible, and let's just say she was under the tutelage for a few years, how does she not know how to use magic? Because she's just waving. Because the only time we see her use that wand is when she basically uses it like a bow stick to fight, Elphaba, in the Munchkin village. Like, what the fuck was she doing this entire time? How has she not learned a single thing? I mean, a student at Hogwarts after their first year would at least know how to transmute things, from a book to a frog or something like that. How does she not know how to do anything magic-wise?
So I saw something way back when. I think this is before the movies even came out. Specifically talking about why we don't see magic as much. It's a fairly common thing in a lot of fantasy stuff where as more powerful, because like in Lord of the Rings, we have the wizards and they are able to do pretty magical things, but there aren't a lot of them now, and we know there used to be more.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a pretty common belief in a lot of fantasy stuff that as magical beings die, as they leave the world, maybe there's less magic in the world. We see animals in this world, which I would say is a talking animal is a pretty magical thing. We see them starting to lose the ability to speak. So I saw someone make an argument like, I think there's less magic in this world than there used to be. Once the wizard got there and started making things more technical and more autonomous, the more we went into that, the less magic there was in the world.
Yeah.
So maybe she did have 10 people in her sorceress class at one point in time, and now there's really only one. they don't explain it. They don't say anything like that. It is interesting to think that she's been there for God knows how long teaching sorcery class. There's no one there that can do magic. Like you've got 10 graduates every few years and they can't even do a ball gown. But it is a good point that, like, yeah, what the fuck I mean, we know at the end that she says she's going to work with the Grimory. So maybe there is some magic in her. She's just not good at doing anything with it.
But do you?
Yeah, they don't explain any of it.
Well, I was gonna say like because she takes a sudden interest in Elphaba because she exhibits like these innate abilities, whereas Glinda, she kind of begrudgingly takes her on. But I kind of chalk it down to the fact that that Elphaba does have innate abilities, whereas you know Glinda's pretty much starting from scratch because she doesn't really have anything innate. But that's my reading of it. But yeah, I just think it's so disturbing just how things kind of get taken to 11 where to your point, Bradley, Madame Warble decides let's go ahead and harm a member of the family. I'm just going to pull this house from another dimension and drop it on this unsuspecting paraplegic as she's rolling around looking for her Tin Man lover.
Yeah, it's like, what in the world was the plan there? I will say also, this is the point of no return.
Mm-hmm.
Once Nessa Rose dies, there is no peace to be had. Like one of the sides is going to have to either leave or die. Because I think even Fiyero leaving, I still think there is a world where there could have been some peace between the sides, but no, once there is definitive death, no, that's it.
Yeah, and also too, because I think this is at the point where where Elphaba goes on the warpath, because after she and Fiyero, make sweet love in the jungle, right? And she kind of senses that her sister's in trouble. She goes to, I guess, quote unquote, pay her respect. And what I find so interesting too is the fact that Glinda says, "I'll give you a moment to say your piece," but then she breaks that silence, and then Elfie's like, "What the fuck?" And then they just start going at it, and a John Wick kind of fight scene.
Funniest scene in these movies.
I know.
It was funny.
The
Yes.
two of them fight.
Like
God, dude. You say you didn't?
No, I liked it. It was like kind of like just like this, like kind of like crazy cat fight, right? Like I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a ton of fun.
I do really like that Elphaba's laughing during it.
Mm-hmm.
So like you can I mean, she loved her sister obviously, but she even says when she last sees her, she's like, "There's nothing I can do to help you. There's nothing more I can do for you." Like it's almost like a breaking of the relationship where she's just officially like, "We're still sisters. I still care for you, but this is it. This is as far as ever going to go." So when she dies, I mean, she's sad, but she's not crying or anything about it. But the fact that she's still there right after her sister died, and she's still laughing with Glinda, another moment you can still see there's so much love there, man. There is just so much love between the Glinda and Elphaba. I will say I saw a thing where it was a picture of Nessa Rose and a picture of Elphaba, and it's like nothing to see here. It's just two sisters who got smashed at the same time. I've been waiting the whole time to bring that one up.
Worth every moment.
Yep, exactly. we're building up to that moment for you, man.
And I'm glad, Bradley, too, that you kind of explained some of that thought process, because initially when she showed up, like I'm like, gosh, like Elphaba is really stoic around her dead sister, right? Someone that we all felt we cared about. But you brought up such a great point, right? Is that kind of the relationship between Nessa and Elphaba has pretty much just gone now, right? Like she's gone kind of that bridge. She's burned too many bridges, and now they're a little bit more. She's still upset with the sister dying, but maybe just doesn't have as much of that emotional connection as I think people would come to expect from two sisters.
Yeah, I think so. I do also like when she's Elphaba's like, seriously, this girl just shows up from Kansas and you give her my sister's shoes and send her on her way, and Glinda is immediately like, what am I supposed to do? This poor girl is lost. I'm just trying to help her a little bit. I'm like, that's kind of nice. Like I get that, because it is a weird thing, like the fact that she knew Nessa and then she takes her shoes and gives them to this random. But I do like the idea that she's like, no, I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to do a little bit of good. I think that's a really nice character moment because I genuinely do think that's all she's ever trying to do. I think she's just genuinely trying to be good, to do good, and it just doesn't ever work out the way she thinks it's going to.
I mean, it always comes down to women fighting over shoes, you know.
Dude, them fighting, oh my god, it is so doing the hair toss during the fight. Oh my god, it's so funny.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Though I will say this, right? Because this is the part where like Fiyero shows up with his gun, right? And he threatens Glinda, right? Because he wants Elphaba to go. And I don't know. The scene, it bugged me, right? Because Elphaba's there, right? There's like a few armed people that are there, right? You have all the flying monkeys. And I'm like, was there really no strategy where Fiyero could have got out there alive?
Dude, seriously.
He just had to get like the shit kicked in, and that was the only thing that we have. Because like even like earlier, right? We saw at the very beginning there was a bunch of like armed people that were helping with the Yellow Brick Road and protecting the animals while they were doing work, and she had no problem like dismissing all of them. But then like a handful of people over, I'm like, God, like Glinda's there, like Glinda, you can't stop and be like, hey, now I know Glinda did try, right? I don't want to take that away from it. But my God, it just felt like everything was there, and Fiyero just had to get beat up and killed, air quotes, right? Because he obviously becomes the Scarecrow, thanks to Elphaba trying to save his life. But yeah, it just drove me insane. I'm like, oh my God, could you not have saved him? Like, come on, you had to know there's some way for you to use your magic to save him, right? I mean, like when you're at the school, you inadvertently cause like everyone to like fly up in the air, right? Like there's so many things that could happen, but nothing to save Fiyero, the guy that you just got done smashing. Like I don't know. It just, like I said, it bothered me to see it happen like that.
It kind of feels like a Titanic situation all over again, where they could have gotten on the door together. just get on the broom with Elphaba and fly off Fiyero. Like, what are they going to do? Stop you?
Maybe there's a max weight limit on that broom.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I was thinking. I even looked it up a bit. I was like, is there something in the show, the theater show? I'm like, is there some reason that that he can't go? No, not that I remember. I was like, there isn't even a throwaway line about your broom can't handle two people. Not that I remember. I was like, man, yeah. Why the fuck? Why don't you go? I don't know.
I mean,
it's just so that we could get the Scarecrow.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, it's just so weird how how Glinda just decides to give Dorothy Nessarosa's shoes. I'm like, okay, like is she doing it because she wants to help Dorothy, or because deep down she still wants to get back at Elfie for stealing her man? Because I mean, she makes that catty.
Probably,
she makes that catty
probably
remark.
A certain level of both.
Yeah,
I can see that.
And like, don't the shoes have powers, right? So can't Dorothy just like fly, right? Like, I mean, we see what the shoes do when Nessa's using them. Why can't Dorothy utilize them at all?
Well, I thought the shoes are supposed to be red. That's what I thought.
So I will say that that's something that when I was looking into it way back when, that the shoes in the movie were red because they wanted to show the Technicolor shoes. They wanted it to really stick out. In the original story, they were silver.
Okay, so they're staying true to
so that
material.
That was something they changed for the movie Wizard of Oz because they wanted it to really stand. Jesus, sorry. Trying not to cough in the microphone, but they wanted to stand out in the original movie.
Gotcha. Well, actually, this leads us into the into the next point. Is we finally get introduced to Dorothy, and her quest, I guess, quote unquote, to bring down the Wicked Witch of the West, and to your point, Bradley, like in the original movie, like it just comes off as like like a mission to just stop the Wicked Witch of the West from terrifying all of Oz. But obviously when she goes to meet with the wizard, there's like this ulterior motive. to all of this. Kind of continues the theme of the wizard is a total dick, and well, what better way to get rid of your enemy than to send this poor helpless girl out into, I guess, the West Country or wherever it is, and basically kill her on his behalf. So basically, if you think about it, Dorothy becomes a mercenary of some sort. I guess you could even say she's an expendable along with Bach, Fiyero, and the Cowardly Lion. I was trying to work in an expendable bit. I don't know if that landed pretty well.
I freaking love the idea
that's
of Dorothy
fine, man.
just being like a child mercenary.
Yeah, that's the thing too, child mercenary. And yeah, I mean, talk about like Bach, right? Like he is just possessed, right? On this mission. Like he's just like, we're gonna kill her, we're gonna do all this. And there's that scene where like he's looking up at Glinda as he's like chanting all this. I'm like, man, the fucking Tin Man's got no chill at all. Like that guy's just hell bent on
well, he's got no heart, Lee, so why does he care?
I know, that's true. And then let's not forget the Cowardly Lion, right? I forget what Bradley was like. You that mentioned the Cowardly Lion, right? This is where, the Tin Man's just sitting there and be like, "Oh, look at the Cowardly Lion! It's the coward because the Wicked Witch of the West, left him by his own devices, and that's why he can't fend for himself." I'm like, wow, talk about like changing up history, right? Like, literally saved him. Fiyero, right? Another person that helped them, a Scarecrow, is with them too. So that always tries to be great. Like, hey, there's another guy there that was a part of the events that happened. And yeah, that he just throws the Cowardly Lion under the bus. He's like, nah, man, like you suck because of what the Wicked Witch of the West did, right? And then the Cowardly Lion just has to kind of agree with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Look, this is Wizard of Oz fan fiction. Okay, we need to make this thing fit so that we can get all the characters in there somehow.
But I mean, well, to go back a little bit, because wasn't it the Cowardly Lion who kind of exposes Elphaba to the other animals?
Yeah, that was
That's
like
true.
the first time in this movie where I'm like, Elphaba starts to have something good happen, and if something comes in, it's like, nah, get fucked. She's getting them on her side. She's great, and the lion's like, no, I suck, and it's her fault. And then they start running. You're like, well, damn, okay. The lion just sucks in this. And I do like when so in the stage show I mentioned you'd never see the lion. He just gets like he's like off stage and he like roars. I think Bach is trying to pull him out to say what he needs to say, and he doesn't do it. In this, Bach like picks up a damn lion with one hand and just like chucks him in the middle of the group of people. I was like, there, talk. You're like, fuck, okay.
Fucking Bach was just the Tin Man was just totally off the chains in this.
Yeah, dude, that 10 man is on the warpath.
So I mean, Lee, you mentioned this before, but we don't really see that much of. Well, we don't see Dorothy's face, and that's because John Chu said he wanted to focus more on Elphaba and Glinda.
Yeah.
The thing that really bothered me was the fact that when Dorothy confronts Elphaba in the castle, we don't really see that much. We just see like the shadows on the wall, really. And Glinda's just sitting there in the closet, just like clutching her pearls and just trying hard not to sob. And I'm just wondering, I'm like, do we really need to see it from Glinda's perspective? I would very much prefer like to see it happen like right there, like in the scene itself. I don't want to see Glinda's reaction to it because, well, I don't really care what Glinda's reaction is because you can kind of predict what's going on here. Also, not to mention, also to mention too, I mean, Glinda actually pours out the bucket of water herself. So is she like doing some weird form of seppuku where she's just like laying all the weapons out so Dorothy can just grab it and chuck the bucket of water at her? Like,
Oh yeah, Elphaba is 100% planning this.
okay,
Yeah, this is Herd. So this is Herd and Fiero's plan to get away because they have the lines earlier. God, sorry. They had the lines about she's so in like pure water would melt her, so they're just playing into that because they know it's bullshit. But yeah, in the stage show, like I said, Dorothy's not even a character. She is just a shadow projection. That's all she is. And it is the fact that this isn't her story. She just is a small part of it. So in this, we see them on the yellow brick road. We see the first person thing of her being captured by the monkeys. We see her when Elphaba's yelling at her. None of that is in the stage show. You do see the thing where Elphaba's like yelling downstairs, like, get those shoes off your feet. That's all you see. And then she's a shadow. So there's no in the stage show, I think she does melt on stage because she goes through a trap door and just the hat's left behind, but you don't actually see Dorothy. And then Glinda's just hanging out in the closet. But I mean, yeah, I think it's fine enough that they don't want to have to show someone melting. I think they were probably just like, all right, let's just not worry about that. Let's just shadow, smoke effect, cool, done. Put the hat there. But yeah, like I said, in the stage show, that's pretty much exactly how it's done.
Yeah, and knowing that's the way they do it, I think it's kind of a nice homage, right, to that. Then, like, hey, because as everyone's pointed out, right, Dorothy's not really a part of the story, right? Like, we obviously know the Wizard of Oz. I'm sure that's how most people got first introduced to this world, but she is not the focal point of this. So to have her not out there doesn't really bother me a whole lot. And knowing that the play does something similar, I think is a very nice shout out to that.
Yeah.
Oh, Brendan, any thoughts, man?
I will also add just briefly. I think the reason they don't show Dorothy as much, even just beyond the it's not her story thing, I think they're trying to simultaneously play on the nostalgia and the iconography of the Wizard of Oz without infringing upon it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's part of the reason that we also never see like Dorothy on screen. We don't see her actually do much of the like actual fighting, and it's also the homage to what they do on stage. But I think that's at least part of what's going on there. I think that this is an interesting sequence because obviously you get the whole For Good sequence there right before all of this, which For Good is one of my favorite songs in the entire show. I think it really lands the sort of emotional hit there. And I think that the chemistry between Glinda and Elphaba, especially in the movie, really helps to sell it. I think they do sort of set up during that conversation. I think it was post getting down, but right before she goes off to try to save Nessarose, so that there's the trapdoors inside of the castle.
Yeah,
there's a conversation there at some point. So I don't have a problem with how they go about that so much. But
well, I was going to say too, because if we're sticking with that theme of the state sponsoring Glinda and to your point, Bradley, Elphaba is basically a domestic terrorist. I mean, you could also make the argument that Dorothy and her companions, the reason why we don't really see their faces, or the reason why they're portrayed as such, is that they're pretty much the faceless pawns of the state, being sent out to do all these things because the wizard himself doesn't want to get his hands dirty. But that's just my interpretation. Mind you, when you look at it like that, it kind of reminds me of the Christmas Club. Lee, you remember from One Battle After Another? Like, we don't really see them active, but they kind of like manipulate things in the background to kind of have things kind of happen the way that they want it to happen. So, so with Elphaba dead, right? Well, quote unquote dead, Dorothy basically raises that, and I will say this: the way that she raises that broomstick in the air, it's kind of like in Mortal Kombat, where after you do the fatality, you hold up the severed head of your enemy, and you're like, "Behold!"
That's fair.
Yeah, behold the head of a traitor. Just Glinda has this moment where she's cradling the hat that she gave to Elphaba from part one, and I will say it was a really really tender moment too. I kind of enjoyed that, right? Because Glinda genuinely believes that her friend is gone, and that it's up to her to carry the mantle because there's nobody left. And then Chistery shows up and he finally speaks and he gives her this little vial that Elphaba's been carrying this entire time, right? And lo and behold, Glinda decides to make her confrontation with the wizard. And I would say this is the moment where Glinda finally has some balls. Like she finally stands up to the wizard. So let's go ahead and dive into that, because the revelation that we get, it kind of reminds me of a French movie that I saw way back in the day, where this man, he basically torments his neighbor. And he ends up causing him to off himself, but then he comes to realize his neighbor was actually his long lost son. So, any of you guys, if you want to kick off that discussion about what we find in that denouement at the end.
Okay, what the fuck was this movie? So I know to avoid it, never watch it ever.
Um,
Oh my god.
Well, it's a two-part movie. So the first one was Jean de Florette, and the second movie is called Menon de Source. So unless you know French, I wouldn't worry too much about watching that movie. But
All right,
that's the
good,
basic
good.
gist.
If you want to watch a weird movie where there's this weird dynamic between family members, don't watch a movie called Old Boy.
I knew you were going to say
See,
that. Lee.
literally, Old Boy is what I was thinking you were gonna say, and then you're like, yeah, his son kills himself. Oh shit, that's maybe not as fucked up, but still pretty fucked up.
That's what I was going to say, because I think, have you seen Old Boy, Bradley? I think you've seen it before, the original, or yeah. So I was going to say you're surprised by that one, but you'll watch Old Boy. So.
Well, Old Boy is still a good movie. Shut up. Yeah, it's very. I like in this that Goldblum really sells how distraught he is in finding out that Elphaba was his. That is something that, stage show, you don't get face acting very much. Everything's got to be big, or else you're never going to see it. You don't really get him being sad. He's in the stage show. He's like, oh, that sucks. Oh, well, off to my balloon. So I do really like that moment in this. This for me, I feel like this is where Glinda's story has been slow burn building. And I do feel like this is ultimately where she is like, now that Elphaba's gone, someone has to fill the void of who is good. And she gets rid of the there's a little scene, a little line in Game of Thrones I was thinking about, which it got stuck in my head. I'm like, why is this in my head? And then it made me think about this movie. When before the Battle of the Blackwater, Bronn is saying, like all the thievery has gone down, and he's like, how'd you do that? Well, we arrested all the known thieves. So in this, she's like, all the bad people are gone. How do you know? I fucking got rid of all of them. It is a nice sort of purging of the old blood moment. And this is again where I like how she's got this army of monkeys to kind of be her, because it's like that statement about you in one army. I mean, she's got them. And she's the one, giving commands, and she's saying this is how we're going to do this. The thing, my favorite change from the end of this versus the theater show is, I said there are no animals in the theater show except for the goat. In this, you get to see all the animals come back. I think that's my favorite thing about the ending of this movie, is that you do get to see that what Elphaba was fighting for, it's still here. It still came about.
It's kind of like at the end of V for Vendetta, when you see like all the former victims of Sutler taking their masks off and you see their faces,
Yeah, it is a very nice full circle moment that I genuinely enjoy. I think the end of this movie for me is excellent. I really do think once we hit No Good Deed, pretty much from there on, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty solid. A lot of my issues come before that. I will also say No Good Deed in IMAX. Fucking hell, dude. Oh God, it's so great to have tears come down your eyes and coming down your face, and then the sound system blows them off your face. That's pretty cool. But yeah, No Good Deed, the imagery at the end where she's flying in front with the monkeys trying her and the fire. I'm like, bro, they know exactly what the fuck they're doing with this song. This is good shit. But yeah, I think the last chunk of this is great. I think the ultimate ending is excellent. And yeah, I like all the different storylines that we get. I don't like how much Fierro looks like Ryan Reynolds at the end. It's weird. Like, if I did not know it was Jonathan Bailey, I swear to God, I'd be like, why is Ryan Reynolds in this fucking movie?
He's in
and yeah,
everything.
like I
So.
but yeah, the thing about them, going off to wherever they're going, I'm like, I think I maybe would have just had them, live in secret or something. I don't know. That I don't like the end of as much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
think
the rest of it was good.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of me that's like I know that they're singing at the end and they're like, how would I ever know what happens? And I think them singing is like their connection or their realization that they're okay. But deep down, I think it would have been cooler if Elphaba stayed behind with Fiero and they just lived in secrecy. There's always that hope that maybe they discover each other again. So I think that's a little bit of that kind of wanting something to happen on a happy note. Maybe it overshrouds that because I think a lot of it's kind of outside that's paid by numbers because Madame Marble gets captured and everything, which I think was going to be expected. The whole part with the wizard being the father, right? It helps us understand more about her background, right? Elphaba so kind of explains, why is her skin green, why she has powers, right? Because the wizard comes from the noble world, or I don't even know how to describe it, right? Comes from our world, right? Comes from our reality, because I think he's from like Omaha or something. I think that's what's on the side of the balloon, right? So he's just kind of is from our world, but I still felt like I didn't really know why it was significant for him to have that realization, right? Like, yeah, I mean, granted, I don't think anyone wants to, have a kid get murdered, but it's like, how much care can you possibly have for a kid that you didn't know was yours, right? Like, and I mean, I do see like a little bit of the irony, right? The fact that, he pretty much sent Dorothy on a quest to murder the daughter, but I would think I would have liked more of, I think I would have liked it more if we knew that the wizard was yearning for a family or yearning for some type of connection.
I mean, he does mention it in part 1, though. Like he says, I like to think of myself as a father, and like everyone's like my son or my daughter, kind of thing.
Okay, that's fair, right? I totally forgot about that. I will rescind my comment, right? So I will retract that, right? So, that is a good point, right? So if it was played up as something like that, I could definitely feel more for the character. Maybe they could have sprinkled it a little bit more, right? Because I watched this twice and that didn't ring upon me again. So maybe that's just my problem as a viewer that I have to take away. But I think that the ending was something that I guess did kind of give a glimmer of hope, but maybe not as much of a glimmer as I would have liked to see.
That's fair.
I was gonna say the thing with the wizard and the bottle for me, I enjoy the dramatic irony of that because in Sentimental Man at the end of the first act, he does talk about how he always wanted to be a father but never did. But never was able to. So he took the people of Oz under his wing. I mean, granted, he was still trying to like manipulate and show like, oh, I'm so benevolent and all that, but I think there was some sincerity in that. So I think the impact of realizing, oh, my enemy this whole time has been my child is there, and I think Goldblum sells it well. I think they could have used a bit more in the actual story of it to make it really land like that. But I think that it is what it is. As far as the overall ending of the story, I do appreciate Glinda kind of coming into her own, taking control of Oz, sending the wizard off, and basically banishing him. I agree. I think that Elphaba probably shouldn't have gone into this new like nation or realm or whatever it was that she and Fiero went to. I think they probably could have just hid out in the castle there and been okay. But
yeah, girl straight up walked into the shadow realm at the end of the movie. I'm like, this is fine.
What was I? There was one more thing I was going to say. I lost it. I lost the last thing I was going to say. But
Well, let's do this. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. So what are our thoughts? So two questions here. So the first question I'm going to ask is, what are our thoughts of Wicked Part 2?
I enjoy it. I do not think it is as good as the first one.
Just as a standalone, yeah, I think it's weaker, which seems to be a trend with overall just how Act 2 is received for the play 2. I think that's just in the writing. It's weaker just because you're going 1 point to 1 point to 1 point to 1 point to 1 point without really fleshing out why they're making these decisions and why they're doing the things they do. So I think it's okay. It's not as good as the first one. I think some of the performances are stronger. I think Ariana gives a stronger performance in this movie than in the first one, personally. But but that's just me.
No, I'd actually agree. I would definitely agree with that on that, Brendan. And I would say that I share everyone's sentiment. I felt like this was a much weaker part of the entry. I think for the first one, you have a lot of setup. And because it's a two-part film, you're hoping that a lot more of that payoff happens in that second part. And I feel like there was elements that they set up that didn't really go anywhere. I felt that maybe too many characters were taking a backseat to the story. I would have liked to see a little bit more happen with that. And then there was just times where I was kind of just frustrated with what a character was doing. Bach in particular just drove me crazy. Like, I'm just like, my guy, you need to like fucking chill, right? You're like, oh, I'm like swooning over Glinda, even though we never really had a real relationship. And, then it's like, oh, I'm in this terrible relationship, right, with Nessa. And then, Nessa's the one that kind of betrays it. And then, now I'm like, oh, I hate Elphaba. Like, it's just kind of all over the map. So there was just times where I felt that the characters didn't really, I think, connect where I wanted to see them connect. And I think there was just times too, like even for Glinda, right, who, I felt like, definitely came at your own, right? I really like that, Brendan. Like at the end of the day, Glinda did fill that hole of where she needed to be. It just felt like, damn, she took a long time to get there. And even at some points in this, right, like that whole scene that Bradley you mentioned where, we talked about that, Glinda kind of suggested to Marble and the wizard, like, hey, go after the sister. Just a few words would have totally changed my perspective of her. But with the way they laid it out, I felt like it just made Glinda at times just too unlikable. And you kind of get to the point where if a character continues to do things that are just going to frustrate you, there's only so many times that you can almost forgive them for their shortcomings. And I feel like for Glinda, that was maybe the one too far. If it happened the way it did in the play, I think I would have had a very different outlook on what I liked with this. But as I said, I think there's just too many character moments where I just felt like the characters never really developed it the way I would like them.
So let's get into our final scores, and then we can assess our view of Wicked parts 1 and 2 overall. So so I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. I thought it was okay, but compared to part 1, it kind of missed the mark. And I would even say like its tone was far darker than what I would have liked. And the fact that we see Glinda make the suggestion of going after the sister, that for me kind of it kind of spoiled the way that I viewed Glinda, because up until that point, yes, I thought she was shallow. Yes, I thought she was a bit vapid, but maybe there could have been a redemption arc. And I felt like once she said it, it's like, well, it's gonna take a lot for you to try to build your credibility back up, because even though you didn't push for the sister to get killed by a house falling on her, I mean, the fact that you kind of put the idea into their head, it's kind of like, in some ways, you're still culpable. It's like the guard at Auschwitz. Even though you're following orders, you still took part in something that was pretty terrible. So that's my score. I want to give you guys enough time to give your scores and offer your reasons as well.
All right, Glinda's like a guard at Auschwitz. Got it.
Best friends, a guard at Auschwitz and a domestic terrorist.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, Bradley, what's your score for Wicked Part 2?
I would say maybe like a 3.5. If No Good Deed wasn't so fucking heavy metal for me, it'd probably be a 3, because it killed me. Because like I said, once we hit that point onward, I'm good. I will also say my favorite song in the whole show is As Long As You're Mine. So that being the second movie, it's going to bump it up a bit. They really do lose some points in the, like what Lee was saying, the way that they changed, because I've seen the way it was originally written with the sister thing, and to see it change, I'm like, that's a bad change in like every imaginable way, and it frustrates me. Sometimes the thing about Fiero getting left behind, I'm just like, I don't remember if there was a reason in the stage show why, but now it's like, bro, you've got all the monkeys here, you've got the manpower, you've got the broom, you've got, what the fuck, why are you staying here? I think the way Bach looked was terrifying, but I kind of dig it. Like, I was like, that's not bad. And the two songs they added were No Place Like Home in the beginning. I thought was fine. Ariana Grande's one, I couldn't understand anything she said in it. Like, she was singing in such a weird, flitty, high voice in it. And what kills me is, so every other thing that she sings in this, she has heard Broadway singers sing it, and I can tell her singing it in a Broadway style. That one song, I'm like, this sounds more like an Ariana Grande song instead of a song in Wicked being sung by Ariana Grande. And I disliked it. Honestly, even the one that Cynthia Erivo sang, I was like, I can hear these songs, and I can tell that they are noticeably different than the other songs around them. So that kind of but overall, I still think it's an enjoyable movie. It's it's got issues, but I overall enjoyed it. I will also say, I don't want to out my mom like this, but my mom has seen the tour of Wicked. She's seen this damn show. She didn't remember jack shit about this show. So when we saw Wicked for Good, when Elphaba shows up at the end, oh my God, my mom was weeping. She was like, "Oh, it's so sweet." I'm like, "Didn't you remember?" No, I didn't remember. So I'm glad my sister told her. She's like, "Bring a stack of napkins." My mom was like, "Why?" She's like, "You're gonna cry." Man, I'm telling you, my mom was crying before For Good even happened. They like looked at each other in that castle. My mom's like tearing up a little bit. She went through a whole stack of napkins by the end of that movie. So that was kind of nice. That was a fun experience for me. But yeah, I still think it's a good movie. I would have changed a few things, but still enjoyable. The music, I still think is great. All the performers are still just crushing it. But I think it could have used some work.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I'd probably give it about a 3 on my personal scaling, just because there are a lot of issues with like motivation, plot, and
No, Brendan, you're muted.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was weird because I can hear him through his voice and through the headset, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, I'm only hearing one of you now.
All right. So I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. I have a lot of issues with like just sort of the plotting. I know why they made this movie into 2 parts. I think you could have made one long movie out of it. The problem is that making one long movie out of it, you're going to leave you're not going to have the high that Wicked 1 ended on with Defying Gravity, and just have all that happiness and giddiness going on, because then the second half at the end, if you make it one movie, is just going to be just kind of dour and dark all the way to the end, and you're not going to have quite as much like joy in it from the audience and the viewing public. So I get why they split it into two. The pacing is an issue, I guess, in the stage show as well, because it just feels like it's one thing after another without a whole lot of motivation. It's just this happens, then this happens, then this happens. And so this happens. It just doesn't land for me that way. I think the performances are still really good. Like I said, I think Ariana's performance was better in this one than it was in the last one. I think Cynthia Erivo was still really good in it. I really liked Jonathan Bailey for the 5 minutes he showed up on screen.
You mean Ryan Reynolds?
And I really do enjoy the music. I like the renditions. I think Bradley and I talked about this when we saw it. You can, like he said, you can very much tell that these two new songs were written 20 years later. And it just, that's the thing about adding songs to these musicals is, yeah, it's written by the same guys, but they're at completely different places in their lives now than where they were when they first wrote the actual show. And I think that affects the way that the songs are written, the way that they come across, the way that they're affected. I think they're good songs. I was able to understand a bit more of Girl in the Bubble than Bradley was, but it did feel very much more Ariana Grande than Glinda. I had most of the same problems with the cinematography when Elphaba was alone in her solos. The visuals definitely carried no good deed. Plus Cynthia's vocal chops. And No Place Like Home was just, it was a nice, pretty song, but it was kind of boring to look at and watch. So yeah, 3 out of 5. Yeah.
All right, well, I'm gonna piss on everyone's Cheerios. Not. I don't think too extremely. I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5. I felt like what I enjoyed with the first one carried over to the second one. Right. I think the visuals, the singing, everything like that is absolutely top notch. Not gonna throw any shade against anything with that. I felt that the character motivations to me were the most frustrating part of part 2. Because as we move through the story, there's just times where I just couldn't envision why a certain character was doing something the way they were doing it. And we see it a lot throughout. I talked a little bit about Bach and as the Tin Man, and God, like he just totally was off the chains for me as far as whatever the hell he was wanting to do. I think there are aspects of it where you kind of just want to chalk it up to, it's just magic. But I never felt like I got a good grasp on what can't happen in this world, right? We're talking about like levitating monkeys, and you have to use this grimoire, and then you have this person that could just summon cyclones, and they don't need the grimoire. So I don't understand where is it useful versus not useful. Like, where do we get all this stuff? I just felt like there was more of an opportunity to maybe flesh out some of the stuff that didn't get a chance to flesh out. Because the first one was like close to, I think like 2.5. It was over 2.5 hours. I think this one with credits was something like 2:10. So I felt like I know the back half felt maybe a little bit bloated, but if I'm going to add elements to it, I would like to see a little bit more payoff. And I just don't think it happened. So 2.5 out of 5. I'm happy I watched them. I just wish that the story matched what it felt like all the characters were going to be able to do.
So the last question that I'm going to ask here is, how do we feel about Wicked and Wicked for Good overall? Do we feel like that was, it was the best way to kind of adapt a well-known musical to film? Do we feel like it kind of serves as a good introductory course or introduction to Wicked overall, or do we feel like there are some elements that kind of miss the mark, and we should kind of take it with a grain of salt when trying to understand what we see on screen as opposed to what we see on stage. Bradley, I say you're chomping at the bits here.
I'm trying not to die. I mean, I think it's solid. I do. I, as a theater guy and someone who has seen the show, very familiar with it. I think it's solid from end to end. Some things I would change, but that's also coming from a stage person, not someone who actively works in film. So you're never going to agree with everything 100%. I think it's a pretty faithful adaptation. I again think the casting was for the most part great. A lot of great performances, a lot of great imagery. So I have a good time with these. I think they're both very well made films, and I think they are very good representations of really the stage. Because I was thinking about it. I don't think there's any other movie musical that I have seen that I've seen the stage version of before I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I don't know how this stacks up to stuff like Hairspray or Phantom
Or The
or
Wiz,
Mean
for that matter.
Girls. Yeah, or like any of that stuff. I'm like, I don't know how it stacks up to a lot of that stuff because I haven't seen the stage versions of those before I saw the movies. So a little hard to say, but for me, I think it is a very good representation. I think it stacks up well. I think they're very enjoyable. Again, the first one more so than the second one. But I think if you were to double feature these, I do not think you would walk away in a bad mood. I think they're very satisfying.
So let me ask you this then as a follow-up question. So if you're talking to to an ordinary person on the street, and they said, hey, I see that Wicked and Wicked for Good are out on streaming, but the state, but the musicals coming to my local town pretty soon. Which one would you recommend them that they check out first, either the movie or the musical?
Stage show, not even close.
Okay.
Yeah, not even remotely close. The stage show I think is just a lot more representative because it is from the people who wrote it, who did the original story, original music, everything like that. So you don't have to have questions about, I wonder how this compares to the original. I wonder. You don't really have to wonder. Is the thing. You're just watching it. So I think that's really nice. Then you'll also get more of an understanding in watching the film and be like, oh, this is a reference to this. Oh, I understand they changed this. Oh, I understand why they changed this. You don't have all those points of reference if you haven't seen the stage show first. So if it's just a question of first or second, I would absolutely watch the stage show. And I will say, especially for us in North Carolina, Wicked comes to Charlotte like every November, like the end of the year. It's like clockwork every year. So when I saw it in Ovens, and I saw it in a very uncomfortable seat with too many people sitting around me, and still had a great time. So it is definitely, it's a showstopper, man. I will say I've seen a lot of shows. Usually, as soon as Act 1 ends, there's already a line of people trying to get out, go to the bathroom, go for refreshments, whatever. Wicked is the one show that I've seen that when Act 1 ends, people are still clapping. People are still standing. People are still cheering. Like, it is not the immediate everyone running outside as fast as they can. Is the one show. Parade was kind of close, but that's because the main actor stays on stage during intermission. So I think some people were a little unsure if they were allowed to get up and leave yet. But yeah, after Defying Gravity, you almost can't just immediately leave. You have to sit there and clap for another minute.
Lee, Brendan, what are your thoughts on Wicked and Wicked for Good overall?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed them, right? I think that they're a good bit of fun, and I could absolutely imagine how seeing this on stage would be awesome, right? Because where it excels at is the songs, right? Fantastic, right? Like Defying Gravity was such a powerful song. Like I cannot tell people how much I love that song. It was so good. I had everything on there. And what I'm happy about is I'm glad to see that companies are willing to take a chance at something like this and really put a lot of money into it, right? This film is gorgeous. And I feel like if you got a producer or you got somebody that didn't put as much effort into this, I'd imagine that people would have a lot more, I would say, wouldn't have as strong feelings about it. So I'm glad that they went all out with this, because it absolutely felt like something that deserved to get this type of praise. I would say a lot of my qualms just come with, I don't feel that certain elements moved the way I wanted to, especially with the characters. I think there were some confusing choices there. And I don't feel like I felt maybe as strongly about Glinda and Elphaba as maybe other people did regarding the relationship. But I think a lot of that probably came down to just how the movie portrayed it and not as much how it was portrayed, in the actual theater part of it. So like I said, I was happy to check it out. I feel like I went in with questions and I left with more questions. So there are things that I feel like that pop up that don't get really an adequate enough explanation that I feel like I would have liked to see a little bit more of. But it was something where, I'd enjoyed it. I'm glad I got an opportunity to do it. I'm glad I got a chance to talk with people that, know more about theater, know more about the stuff, because it was great to be able to get a different insight than, something that for myself that's never seen it, to know more about the play, I think was awesome.
I think it was a really good time. I had been looking forward to these movies for a while, and one definitely lived up to the hype for me. Two has its problems, but I still enjoyed it. I'll watch it again. I'll watch them both again at some point. So that's about as good of a thing. To me, if you can watch a movie over and over again and still enjoy it, that means it's pretty good. So,
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that was basically where I was at. So you're good.